समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
In this week's National Interest, we had underlined how Kejriwal's politics has run into trouble now, has run into some kind of a dead end, simply because he never chose an ideology. He does not have an ideology. However, we had noticed something long back. In fact, I wrote about this in February 2014, and that is the National Interest I would refer to today, where we had said that he does not have an ideology, but he has something. He has something. And then I had said, don't say he did not warn us. Read his scary little manifesto, in which it all starts with a king, a courtesan, and their GramSabha. That article was headlined Arvind Chitrakatha. Arvind Kejriwal put together his revolutionary thoughts on what is wrong with India and how to fix it in a tiny book of no more than 35,000 words or so called Swaraj, published by HarperCollins. To make it more affordable, Kejriwal even waived his royalties graciously, so it costs all of rupees 135 in English. It's been printed in a large type size with plenty of spacing to make it easier to read. Here was an exciting political debutant who does the one thing no Indian politician has done, perhaps since Nehru wrote his Discovery of India over hundreds of intellectually challenging pages, or since Guruji Golwalkar of the RSS wrote his somewhat more simple-minded bunch of thoughts. I picked up Arvind Kejriwal's Swaraj at the Bangalore airport bookshop. I had no work to do at that point and needed something to read through on a 2.5-hour flight. Swaraj recommended itself both for its size and political relevance, as also for the fact that everything else was just juvenile fiction, the usual stuff that sells on airport bookshops, juvenile fiction, or the alleged lives of our gods, particularly Shiva, and allegedly ancient but recently invented mythologies. Swaraj was worth every paisa of the rupees 135 I spent on it. The only letdown was it did not last the flight. I started reading it as we belted up and was done by the time we were a little over halfway to Delhi or just about approaching Bhopal. It is a quick, exciting, clear, and if I may add, impressive as well as scary read, particularly if you are not a revolutionary. The impressive thing about the most definitive thoughts of Arvind Kejriwal is how brilliantly he has diagnosed India's problem. Because he is not tentative, there is nothing stray, he is somebody who's seen the truth. He states with masterful clarity what makes us citizens so angry, and justifiably so. Our governance is so rotten, our rulers are corrupt and arrogant, the entire delivery system of government services from policing to education to healthcare to anti-poverty schemes is non-functional and putrefied. So a change is needed. You can also be persuaded to go with this larger argument that it would no longer do to just reform this system. It is now broken beyond redemption. Then you come to his solutions, and there the problems begin. Philosophically, Kejriwal draws inspiration from ancient India, where everything was as perfect as Hindutva texts would tell you. His history is all anecdotal. Once upon a time, there was a king in Vaishali, which is the world's oldest democracy, obviously. Dr. Murli Manohar Joshi, because his knowledge of ancient Vedic history is supposedly even better than that of physics, which he taught at Allahabad University, would most likely agree. The Vaishali king's son always became the king, but had no powers. He only did what his Gram Sabhas told him to do. Once his people pointed at a girl and wanted her to become a courtesan. The girl said she had no problem, but only if the king gave his castle to her as a gift. People said fine, and the king had no choice because the people had spoken. people said that the castle is not yours. It was built with our taxes. So the king was forced to give away the castle to the girl who was to become a courtesan. Of course, the king built himself another castle, evidently by levying fresh taxes on the people of his omnipotent GramSabhas, which goes to show how a ruler's glorious tradition of splurging our taxes goes as far back as ancient Vaishali. Kejriwal underlines in all sincerity that it is a bad custom to ask a woman to become a courtesan. Nevertheless, he says the larger message of this story is what matters. That ancient India had real democracy, people had all the power, the sovereign was Naam ke vaste, and the Gram Sabha was the institution of governance. It could make a pretty girl a courtesan and render a king homeless. He doesn't merely rest his case, but goes on to explain it as an agenda for modern India. He makes no pretense of being a historian, but learning ancient Indian history from Chanda Mama or Amar Chitra Katha. Swaraj even has sketches. His book Swaraj even has sketches. So learning ancient Indian history from Chanda Mama or Amar Chitra Katha is even more perilous than knowing Mughal history from watching Jodha Akbar or Rajputana's history from Padmavat. Particularly for grown-ups, I tried a quick check with some prominent historians and their texts. The story Kejriwal is referring to is probably the legend of Amrapali, immortalized in Acharya Chatur Sen's Hindi classic Vaishali ki Nagarvadhu, literally the city's bride, as the chief royal courtesan was called those days. Kejriwal may even have seen the Bollywood version of it, Amrapali. It is a bit old for him, that film, having been released more than 2 years before his birth, but Vaijayanti Mala as the royal courtesan was delectable in her apparently strapless cholis and low-hung sarongs, not saris, and Lata Mangeshkar sang some of her best songs ever for it. YouTube them. So it is likely that those of the younger generations like Kejriwal may have seen the movie too, but it was just a legend, no reality. And by the way, it was the king who wanted the courtesan for himself, and giving away anything his subjects had paid for was a small price to pay for the king's pleasure. Of course, Amrapali was the mythical Indian version of Helen of Troy, and Amrapali in this case, just as Helen led to the destruction of Troy, somebody's passion over Helen led to the destruction of Troy. In this case, obsession over Amrapali caused the annihilation of Vaishali by her other suitor, Ajatashatru, the king of Magad. But more on this later as we go along. We shouldn't digress when the future of India is at stake. The important thing is not Chandamama's history, but the fact that the entire Kejriwal manifesto is inspired by it. His grand idea is supremely virtuous Gram Sabhas and Mohalla Sabhas governing our villages and cities, maybe RWAs, resident welfare associations. They will receive direct, untied funds. What it means is that the government will just deposit money into their accounts without specifying any purpose on instituting supervision, oversight or accountability. Of course, with this, most of the bureaucracy will be rendered irrelevant. Definitely the CAG and its offspring in the state capitals. All of them will then go out, right? An Indian Doge operation then will take place. The MPs and MLAs will no longer make the laws. They will bring the draft of each law to Gram Sabhas, RWAs, etc., take their views and then convey these views in their respective houses, and laws will then be passed directly by the people. The elected representatives will merely be honest correspondents and note takers. They deserve no better, says Kejriwal, because in the current system, they blindly follow their party line or the party whips, and if they defy the high command, they are thrown out. Look who's talking now. Ask some people who might have defied the high command in Aam Aadmi Party. Gram Sabhas will have the power to hire, fire, reward and punish all government employees, from policemen to doctors to teachers. I'm obviously exaggerating, but not too much when I say that the word punish or some equivalent is seen in almost every para of the book. Quick and exemplary punishment is the fundamental philosophy of this new system. And you think these Gram Sabhas could become like Khap Panchayats? What is wrong with Khap Panchayats? that they give out orders that lead to the killing of lovers, etc. This, Kejriwal tells us, is still a matter of contention. In any case, his Gram Sabhas will not have the power to pronounce the death sentence or amputation. If this is the case, a Gram Sabha may declare itself to be a separate state for India. Such powers will not rest with the Sabha. That's on page 97 of the book. Bharat Mata should thank God and Kejriwal for that. The instruments of governance, law enforcement, judiciary, executive, parliament as we know them, shall cease to exist or at least to matter. The mob will be sovereign. The police will have to take orders from the mob. The mob or the Gram Sabha or the Mohalla Sabha or the RWA will then be able to levy and collect its own taxes. No decision will be taken unless the people decide. No wonder Prashant Bhushan, then with Kejriwal, wanted a referendum in Kashmir on whether the army should stay there. We could have also called one in Ahmedabad in February 2002 when riots raged on whether the army should be called out or not, or in all of India on whether Article 370 should continue or not. Or we should have done a quick referendum, preferably through Twitter and Facebook, on 26/11 and whether the people wanted us to go to war with Pakistan. Would you have? Swiss democracy is held up as an example of a perfect system. It banned the construction of Islamic minarets by referendum. And do you know when women got the right to vote in Switzerland? In 1971. Its parliament passed it in 1959, but it continued to be rejected by an all-male referendum. The essence of modern governance, distilled over millennia through the thoughts of Lord Rama, Krishna, Kautilya, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, the caliphs, and Abraham Lincoln, to Gandhi, Ambedkar, and Nelson Mandela, is responsible democracy. It includes checks and balances, stability and credibility, institutions that protect you from majoritarian excess, that give the rulers the strength and confidence to make the best decision for their people and nations in their best wisdom, even if it happens to be an unpopular one on that day. Then they get assessed by the people on their net success or failure after 5 years. Swaraj gives us an entirely new way of governance. It is also an agenda for anarchy. It says the beauty is you can do all this without amending the constitution. Of course, you don't need to when you've thrown it away already. In fact, two more promises of the Kejriwal manifesto are highly credible. One, that it will end Naxalism. It obviously will, because it is essentially a Naxal manifesto, even if inspired by saffron historians. And second, that it will end unemployment. It certainly will. As all of us, the people of India, in the endless meetings of our Gram Sabhas and Mohalla Sabhas, wards and clusters and colonies, will spend all our time governing ourselves and punishing others. Please go pick a copy of Swaraj. Since Kejriwal has waived his royalties, I cannot at least be accused of soliciting commissions for him. Professor Stephen Cohen, teacher to two generations of South Asian strategic scholars and journalists, including this columnist, has a theory on why the CIA failed to predict the 1998 Pokhran explosions and even before that, 1974. Nobody at the CIA, he said, reads anything not marked classified. And the BJP's manifesto in 1998 was not marked classified. So they missed their commitment to the bomb altogether. Neither is the Kejriwal manifesto marked classified, but we are all not CIA. That's why I am saying please do go and read it. Now there is a postscript to my reading of the book and this article because I got curious about Vaishali and about those times. So I started searching. I found in fact some references to Vaishali of those times, probably 6th to 5th century BC. An eminent historian, Upinder Singh's wonderfully erudite and authoritative A History of Ancient and Early Medieval India from the Stone Age to the 12th Century, published by Pearson in 2009. But there was no reference to the courtesan that Chanda Mama, Wikipedia and Kejriwal extol and on which a famous play has been written and movies have been made. There was indeed democracy of the kind that Kejriwal mentions. Singh says Vaishali's greatest asset, governance through discussion, was also their greatest weakness. They were vulnerable to internal dissensions, especially when faced with aggressive monarchies. There was also an invasion of Vaishali by Magadh's Ajat Shatru, but not because he was madly in love with the Nagar Badhu, as Chandamama and Vicky and the movie Amrapali will tell us. He was cross because two cousins who had stolen a wonderful 18-string pearl necklace had been given refuge in Vaishali. He invaded Vaishali, laid it to waste, and massacred all its people except Amrapali. And why did Vaishali, the much stronger and richer state, lose its people? And I quote now again from Professor Upinder Singh's book. Its people spent all their time arguing and fighting over how they should carry out their defense. In fact, according to Buddhist texts quoted by Singh, so notorious was the Vaishali anarchy that even the Bodhisattvas advised a contemplative Buddha in heaven not to be born in that kingdom, as it followed no system or order, as everybody there went around saying, "I am king, I am king." That's a quote. Now, I'm not sure if that is the ancient Vaishali Kejriwal has drawn inspiration from. I, at least, didn't read this in Chandamama. Or maybe he's talking about the Vaishali next door to the Ghaziabad colony where he has lived. Further, the wiki, Chandamama, Amrapali, the film, they all tell us that so ashamed was Amrapali at the destruction of her country because of her that she went to Buddha and became a nun. Kejriwal doesn't tell us this, but then he surely reminds us that the ultimate objective of all mankind is attainment of nirvana / buddhatva and the liberation from all worldly desire. This is page 107 on Swaraj.